Justin Hall will be joining us every Tuesday. We're going to show you how to make your mark on the internet by creating your own personal website.
Who is Justin Hall and why is he noteworthy?
Well, Justin Hall got pretty well known for publishing a couple of years ago a very strange homegrown webpage.
I'm a 20-year-old guy. I can write about my life, and thousands of people will come and read it every day. This is really a revolution.
In 1994, you helped make the web a collaborative medium.
And I publish my life on the fucking internet, and it doesn't make people want to be with me.
Hi, my name is Justin Hall, and I was one of the first people to publish my life on the internet. Today, so many of us feel compelled to share personal moments online. What would happen if you went all the way, being radically honest, totally transparent, exposing yourself to distant strangers? Why would anyone want to do that? As a kid, I grew up with access to technology and a deep need for attention.
Hi.
At home, I had a busy mom and an alcoholic dad. Each week I had therapy appointments so I could pick apart my daily life with professional listeners. Later, I would pick apart my daily life in public on the web. My need for attention and my coming of age somehow coincided with the dawn of participatory media online. I first found love in computers in 1981 when Mom brought home an Apple II Plus for our family. The computer never got tired of hanging out with me. I could entertain myself for hours with games. Then we got a modem and connected our computer to other computers through the phone line. Long before the internet became widely available, people set up BBSs, bulletin board services, where you could dial in and download a file or leave a message for the next person to dial up. I may have felt like a weird and lonely kid, but using these early networks, I could find other weird and lonely people to hang out with. I ran up some huge long-distance phone bills in the mid-1980s when I discovered the Sierra Online BBS offered live text chat. In 1988, a friend loaned me his university internet account. Long before the web existed, I found text-only message boards on the internet called Usenet newsgroups. On Usenet, people talked about all kinds of stuff you might never find in your local bookstore or newspaper. Drugs and sex and music. I was enchanted. In 1991, I raved about Usenet in my high school newspaper. But shortly thereafter, I was kicked off my friend's account, and I was stuck offline. Back then, you couldn't get an internet account if you weren't involved with a university or a defense contractor. I finally got my own access to the internet in 1993 when I enrolled as a freshman at Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania. Now I had Ethernet in my dorm room. I could be online all the time. 24/7 access to the internet. In December 1993, I found an article in a paper newspaper, the New York Times. A writer, John Markoff, described a new part of the internet called the World Wide Web. And Mosaic, a web browser capable of displaying text with images on the same page. Before the web, you had to type in arcane commands to summon information. Now, with the web, anyone could fill their brain with a mouse.
A vast array of information is being made available in attractive, easy-to-use form and for free over the internet.
In December 1993, there were maybe only 600 websites, and you could surf the entire thing in like 2 weekends. I was inspired as I saw all these crude, personal homepages. So many people taking a moment to introduce themselves with a few photos and some basic personal information. I decided I would introduce myself to the web, so I put up Justin's homepage in late January 1994 with a picture of myself and some personal details and a few of my favorite links. I was completely enthralled by the early web. I surfed voraciously and built out my collection of weird, wild, and wonderful links on the World Wide Web. My sex links and drug links would become especially popular. I named my site Justin's Links from the Underground, after a Dostoevsky book that I hadn't read. I began inviting random web surfers to stop by my website.
You know, I go out on the net and I find something cool and I write a little blurb about it and I put it up and people find that blurb and then they write back and they say, "Thank you, that was great. Like, here's what I'm doing. Check this out, Justin, because I think you'd like this as well."
Visitors started trickling in from government institutions, laboratories, and military bases. Here I was, 19 years old, giving guided tours of sex and drugs on the web to government employees. If all these people were coming to look at my luscious links, well, maybe I could inflict some of my poetry on them. So I began to post poems and short stories, each one of them on a separate page. In between those pages, I wrote about the people, places, or experiences that inspired those writings. I began to use the structure of the web to tell the story of my life. I was born in 1974 to two hard-working lawyers in urban Chicago. Growing up, our house was filled with books. Personal computers and private education were paid for by my parents' careers. My mom was born in a wood house with no plumbing in Nebraska to two school teachers who served rural towns. She began working when she was 12. In 1965, my mom graduated from Yale Law School. She was one of 7 women in a class of 160 lawyers. She went on to have a pioneering career in the law, taking off just a week to have each of her 2 sons. When I was in high school, I got to see her argue in front of the Supreme Court. I'm extremely proud of her, but as a kid, I missed spending time with my mom. Unfortunately, my dad wasn't around much either. My father was a bit older than my mom. We were his second family. I remember him as a funny, smart guy who could also get very angry, especially when he drank, which was about every day. In November 1983, my father went into a secluded part of our house and shot himself. I was 8 years old, and it was a lot to try to understand that my father had decided to leave the earth. Why did he decide to leave? Could I have done something to keep him around? Does everyone I love eventually go away? Since my father wasn't there to answer me, I ranted and hurled my questions at him in writing I would later post on my homepage. As I shared intimate stories of loss from my life, my email inbox began to fill up with other people's stories of alcoholism and suicide. I was glad I might be helping them feel less alone, but all the trauma began to overwhelm me. I realized I couldn't be these people's only audience. I wanted to help them find their own audience. So I posted a series of free and simple web tutorials so that anyone might make a site like mine. It turns out it's not very difficult to make a web page. By the spring of 1994, I could give you a tour of the web and then show you how to make it your own. Beep, 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 beep. But I wanted to meet other web experts. When I was in high school, I saw a new magazine advertised on the side of a bus. It was called Wired, and it was the first time I'd seen a technology publication with a human face on the cover. My freshman year in college, I called Wired magazine 4 times begging for an internship. I finally reached this editor, Julie Chiron. She took a look at my website and offered me a chance to join the online division of Wired magazine as they prepared to launch hotwired.com, a new kind of publication for the web. I moved to San Francisco that summer and crashed with the publisher of Hotwire, Jonathan Stoyer. Stoyer lived in the Cyberganic Community House, a bunch of 20-somethings high on the internet crammed into a psychedelic decorated San Francisco Mission District flat with Ethernet to their bedrooms, hosting raves with internet terminals at them. Under their guidance, I went looking for a new address for my personal website. Justin.com was taken, Justin.org was available, but I wanted to get a domain that was more about the web. So I registered links.net, plus an even shorter domain, bud.com.
When he's not working as a reporter for Hotwired, 19-year-old Justin Hall spends his time putting out Justin's links from the underground.
While I was working there, my website often got more traffic than Wired's, mostly because of my sex links. One day in the office, a brightly attired, enthusiastic guy with a hat and a mustache came wandering through the desk. It was Howard Reingold. He'd just published a book about virtual communities, and now he was our executive editor. We sparked up a friendship there, and for 20 years, Howard has been a friend, mentor, and father figure to me. Howard and I shared an open access technology philosophy.
We believed that it was a good thing for people to connect with each other, that it was better for people to participate in the creation of culture actively.
We saw Hotwired as a chance to put the audience on stage and let the web perform for itself. But the publisher of Wired magazine had a different vision. A lanky, long-haired, long-legged libertarian named Louis Rossetto. He would stride into the office and pound out extremely vigorous emails explaining that Hotwired was to be a statement of the Wired brand. Amateur hour on the web is over, he declared. So, in October 1994, Hotwired launched. The front page was loaded with graphics that never changed and slowed down the average computer. Today, few people remember Hotwired as much more than a pioneer of the banner ad. In the years following Hotwired's launch, the sites that would truly transform the way that we communicate were all about letting the audience perform for itself. Meanwhile, all my publishing and ranting online got me invited to prognosticate about the future of publishing at the Rand Corporation to an audience filled with admirals and executives. I am a living example of personal publishing empowerment. As I sat down to frame this talk, I realized I have a pretty bleak message for large-scale publishers. Mass media requires passivity while the net resoundingly rejects it. Being in San Francisco for the digital revolution was intoxicating. But I think I wanted to be a more well-rounded human being. So, with some encouragement from Howard, I returned to college after taking just one semester off to work for Wired. The web was growing fast now, and I couldn't really keep up with the new links. So, I got help building a system to make my website interactive. Now my readers could submit links for each other. By January 1995, I had 27,000 daily readers and link traders visiting links.net. That spring, I got several upset emails from the Indiana University student government. Someone had posted their web address on my sex links page, mislabeling the Indiana University student government homepage as a wild, hot sex site, and their servers were crashing from all the traffic. I just wanted to help promote curiosity and exploration of the range of things happening on the web. I didn't want to hold up a megaphone for assholes. So rather than spend my time policing dirty links, I took down my interactive sex section and quickly lost about 20,000 daily readers. I decided to focus on sharing stories from my life instead. That year I was arrested, and I caught a sexually transmitted disease. Plus, I got in a physical altercation with author Kurt Vonnegut. By now, Justin's Links from the Underground comprised hundreds of pages in a sprawling jumble of personal hypertext. Some of my readers complained that they couldn't tell what was new when they arrived at the front page. So, the night of January 10th, 1996, I resolved to update the front page of links.net with a new entry every day. Now, before I would crawl into bed, I would crawl over to my keyboard and hammer out a new entry on my personal website. I didn't update every day, but here I began an ongoing record of my life for years, for decades. My web traffic was costing me some money, so I asked my readers for donations, and checks and cash began arriving in the mail.
I'm a 20-year-old guy. I can write about my life, and thousands of people will come and read it every day. This is really a revolution. And I think, wait, I'm from a wealthy background, I'm white, and I'm a guy. This is kind of the same thing that's been happening in publishing for the last 400 or 500 years. So maybe what I should do is give it to other people, whether this can catch on in other demographics.
I decided to hit the road and share the web. I reached out to my readers and arranged a bus trip from Philadelphia to San Francisco through the American South, Midwest, and Southwest. I would stay with folks I met from my website and teach anyone in their community how to use HTML to express themselves on the web. I shared the potential for personal online publishing with anyone I could find. In cafes and schools, nightclubs, and a halfway house for the mentally ill in Wichita, Kansas. Folks like that don't have much of a voice in commercial media, so giving someone a chance to share their truth online might help us all understand people we might not see in our everyday life. I believed that the web could promote empathy. If we shared our stories, if we shared difficult truths, if people who weren't us published online, we could learn about each other.
The best kind of computer world is where it would be like a storybook, because if you think about the web, right, you can link to stuff. Imagine if all your relatives had web pages and all their relatives had web pages and some of your dead relatives had web pages telling stories about back before you were born.
I updated from the road with photos and stories. I wrote about women I was attracted to, people I disagreed with. I repeated stories and jokes I was told, and I profiled strangers I met on my travels. Real life is fascinating.
Sometimes it got edgy in that dinner table conversation was not necessarily something you wanted to read about on the internet the following evening.
In the earliest days of the web, you would find most websites through links or lists of sites. But as the web grew from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of sites and servers, people shifted from browsing links to searching. They pulled up early web search engines like AltaVista, InfoSeek, Lycos, or Hotbot. And they would invariably search their name. And they might find that their old pal Justin Hall had written some of the only information available about them on the internet, including my description and interpretation of their life as I knew it. For example, the summer after high school, my computer love led to a job doing IT networking for the Boston Consulting Group. I was allowed to attend their company summer retreat, and I had a real good time. Singing drunken karaoke with one of the senior partners who suggested she would fly me to the Caribbean the next day for a hookup. I ended up going back to a room with someone from accounting. I posted my rundown of this amazing corporate bacchanalia, and drunk people have sex was a leading search result for the Boston Consulting Group for many years. Executives from BCG called and asked if I would take down my pages about my time at the company. I wouldn't, but I removed all the individual names to protect my former colleagues. I was learning that a more popular internet meant more scrutiny for my personal writing project.
I have vivid recollections of your telling stories on your blog. family stories. For years, you revealed the most intimate details of our family life on your blog, which was widely read. And that resulted in criticism and hurt feelings among family members, and increasingly at family gatherings, people were not willing to speak candidly in front of you.
I was hearing from more and more people who were unhappy to be identified in my web pages. My goal was never to hurt anyone. My goal was to try and help people see what it was like being me, and maybe see what other people were like. I began to change the way I wrote online. I stopped using full names, and I would drop identifying details or avoid linking people to sensual psychedelic fun. I was contacted by a filmmaker named Doug Block. Doug was a veteran documentarian who was fascinated by these people who were now sharing the intimate details of their life on the World Wide Web. He asked if he could interview me for his new film homepage.
I don't know if you're planning on talking to this guy, Justin Hall. You should talk to him, he's great. And he's really done it all on the web. And he is a cyberstar.
I learned that Justin is a web pioneer whose site attracts over 7,000 daily readers, and whose writing style has been favorably compared to Kerouac and Ginsberg. I decide if Justin's creating some kind of 90s online version of On the Road, I want to go along for the ride.
I was excited that someone else wanted to document my life because it was so much work documenting it myself. Years later, watching Doug's film homepage, I learned that it can be strange and a bit unsettling to have someone else portray your life and relationships. In those days, I worked to make the internet a part of my life in every way possible. At school, instead of printing out assignments and handing them in, I wrote my papers as web pages and emailed URLs to my professors. So many of my college essays consisted of me applying whatever we were learning to the internet. One semester, I taught a class on web ethics to a few volunteer students and faculty. For my final project in a psychology class, I did an interpretive dance about the internet. I graduated from Swarthmore in 1998 and kissed President Al Bloom on the way out. I never wanted to put ads up around the personal content on my website. It just didn't seem right. So I needed to get a job. Fortunately, I was offered the chance to audition for a new TV channel.
ZDTV, your computer channel, the first network devoted entirely to computers and the internet, 24 hours a day.
ZDTV hired me right out of school to be an on-air host for Web Workshop. I loved media freedom. I thought I could use TV to promote that message.
All right, I'm going to believe you.
We're going to see a massive explosion of personal web pages across the country in the next 5 minutes if you stay with us, all right?
Maybe I could reach an entirely new audience that would learn that the web was theirs to make.
Justin Hall will be joining us every Tuesday from now on. Webmaster Justin
Thank
Hall.
you so much. Wait, one last thing, Leo.
One last thing.
Give them your URL to go to. Huh?
No.
Okay.
All right, Leo,
Thank
if you want to see a web page you don't want to emulate, www. That's very nice of you, leoville.com. Do you have your own? You have justin.org, don't you?
After a few episodes, ZDTV got a letter of protest from Tupelo, Mississippi. Someone there said, "I see you have this homosexual freak pornographer, Justin Hall. He uses drugs and profanity. I know because I read it on his website. And if you keep him on the air, I'm going to organize a boycott of your channel." So I was called into the ZDTV offices and sat down across the desk from somebody, and they said, "Justin, we really can't have this boycott. Are you willing to remove the mature content from your website?" I thought for about a half a second before I said, "TV shows may come and go, but mature content is forever." So I gave up my gig as an on-air TV host. Fortunately, all that personal publishing had given me practice and a portfolio. So I embarked on a freelance writing career. I moved to Japan to cover the launch of the first multimedia mobile phones. There I was, on the streets of Tokyo, reading web pages, uploading photos, and having a video chat in October 2001. Reporting on these gadgets financed adventures that filled my web pages. I went to live at an old bathhouse in rural Japan. Late one night, something strange and painful happened to my genitals. I posted some pictures online, and within a few hours, one of my readers had sent me a valid, non-threatening diagnosis that kept me from having to seek out a doctor. I moved back from Japan to Northern California. Living a life of wandering adventure was fun, but I got tired of being on the road. In 2004, I was offered the chance to apply to an interactive media program within a film school at USC, the University of Southern California. After years of writing about cool stuff that people did with computers, I was excited to learn how to produce software. Summer 2004, I packed up my life in Oakland, California and moved to Los Angeles to start grad school. My first semester at USC, I met a woman I was attracted to. I used this new service called the Facebook to look her up. Suddenly, a lot more people were introducing themselves on public networks. Between semesters, she was living a few hours away, so we arranged a lunch date, and I took my video camera along.
Okay, it's on. It's recording.
Back at home, I shared my excitement about this emerging intimacy in writing on links.net. In the early years of my website, I used text editors to hand type the HTML for my web pages. In 2002, I installed automated weblogging software called Movable Type. Weblogging software made it much easier to share my thoughts. I just had to type them into a form on a web page. Weblogging software also came with user comments. Suddenly, the folks who'd been reading my website and sending me emails could communicate with each other, and they began to use the forums on links.net to share their theories about my life. When I wrote about my new relationship, some of my readers said they'd seen me in love before. They'd read accounts of my prior relationships, and they were ready to say that they thought I wasn't a very good boyfriend, and maybe I didn't know what intimacy was. This was heart-wrenching. I wanted to share what I believed in. I wanted to share what I was excited about. But here, my new relationship was under attack by people I'd supplied with ammunition. My romantic partner didn't feel like being subject to this public scrutiny, so she asked me not to write about her. In January 2005, I turned the camera on myself as I had a bit of a breakdown.
I can't write about people. I can't write about people. They don't want to be there, and I have nothing to write about. I have nothing to write about if I can't write about people, and I have nowhere to go with all this shit.
I felt like I was cutting myself off from something very deep and important to me. This conversation with myself and with a cast of strangers and friends on the web. But that pain was less than the pain of not exploring this new love. I edited this footage into something I called Dark Night and posted it on the front page of links.net as I decided to stop updating the web on my personal life for a while. The San Francisco Chronicle ran a front-page story announcing my retirement from blogging. Some aggressive young men dug up my home address and other personal details that they posted to an online forum, encouraging people to find me at home and teach me a lesson. After making myself so vulnerable, I began to feel less safe on the internet. My front page became a list of social networks I was on and new media sharing services. So you could see music I'd listened to or photographs I'd taken, but strangers were no longer privy to my innermost thoughts. I was sad to switch to sharing shallower media outside of my personal memory banks, but I still wanted to be where the action was online. In grad school, I posted, poked, and friended on early social networks like MySpace and Facebook. Plus, I quested and guilded through massively multiplayer online games like World of Warcraft. I wondered if you could merge the two, where using the internet might earn you points and progress in a social adventure. So with some help, I created a prototype web browser add-on called PMOG, the passively multiplayer online game. PMOG allowed you to earn resources as you surfed that you could use to prank or reward people who followed in your wake. I learned that I could get money from investors who believed me when I said web browsers could become a new platform for video games. So, in 2007, I graduated, and with my girlfriend, we raised $2 million, moved up to San Francisco, hired 9 people, and launched Game Layers, a company developing experimental play across the web. A few years before, I'd been a freelance writer sharing my privates on the web. Now I was a startup CEO with customers, employees, and investors. By this point, my co-founder and I felt capable of any adventure. In the midst of Game Layers, we took a week off to get married in rural California. Unfortunately, the game we built was expensive to maintain. There weren't a huge number of people playing it either, and the ones who were playing didn't want to spend a lot of money. So as our investment dollars ran out, we had to lay everybody off and shut the company down. Within a few months, she was asking for a divorce. Working on Game Layers together left her not wanting to collaborate with me on much of anything. After changing my life, abandoning my art, and investing my soul in what was now a failure, I felt crushed and broken. I had quit writing about my life in public to be with this woman. Now that the relationship was over, I found my voice again on my website as I began to share pained poems about divorce and the end of a dream. In 2011, I was honored to receive the first ever Links.net Most Eligible Bachelor Award. My attempts at being married and starting a company had taught me so much. I wanted to share what I'd learned. So after the company failed, I took about 18 months to write up the longest and most thorough Links.net post ever. I posted financial statements and pitch decks and term sheets, plus 11,000 words detailing our attempt to turn surfing the web into a game and that game into a business. Then, a few years after the end of my marriage, I was able to tell my story of surviving that experience. I thought I would only get married once. At one time, posting a 15-minute-long video about my divorce might have seemed like crazy oversharing. But now the internet is filled with deeply personal divorce story videos. It's easier to share and less controversial. I like shaking things up and breaking new ground, but sometimes it's nice to express yourself and not attract too much attention. Making this divorce video was completely exhausting, but publishing it was profoundly cathartic. It was a chance for me to go back and tell my suffering self that I would be okay. Today, as I film this, I'm in a new relationship, but it's conducted largely in private. This woman has told me I could share more about her online, But I'm cautious and hesitant because I value the intimacy between us more than I crave input from strangers. Sometimes I miss not sharing my struggles in public, but I feel happy and grateful to have a loving relationship.
I felt that as you grew older, you got better judgment about what to put online, so it was less of a concern.
The birth of the web offered an unprecedented opportunity to connect and experiment with other people. I wanted to participate fully, so I tried all kinds of things. Eventually, I learned how to better respect other people's boundaries because I didn't want to hurt anyone, and I can't stand being isolated. I didn't understand how sharing explicit personal stories in public can unsettle people. Some friends and family began to keep their distance to stay out of my spotlight, while strangers increasingly weighed in on my personal affairs. I got hate mail and death threats and money and plane tickets and messages from people who said I changed their lives for the better. I discovered there are people out there ready to be activated. If you put out something of yourself, you'll receive back something like the signal you send. So, granted access to the internet, what do you want to amplify in your life? These days, I share observations, links, and articles on my personal website and on social networks. Because I love banter and sharing knowledge. Plus, I edit articles on Wikipedia and upload media to the Internet Archive because I want to contribute something back to the digital commons that has fed my brain so well for so many years. All the while, I have a lifetime project underway, sharing publicly what I learned being Justin Hall. I'm hatching stories on links.net slowly with permission, instead of rushing salacious details immediately to the web. I'm 40 years old now, not 20, and while I can't stop telling stories, I value my relationships, and I'm not in as much of a rush to get a reaction. It was fun to hang out with the internet when we were both young. Now the internet is everywhere, and so many folks have a chance to connect and contribute. Back in the day, I created HTML pages in text editors and uploaded them to servers managed by friends. Today, we share our sentiments in little windows provided by corporations. They offer us convenience in exchange for control. These companies filter our stories for audiences they manage and monetize. Tomorrow's difficult truths may need to be shared beyond today's corporate enclosures. I'm afraid for too many limits on our public spaces for online conversation. But I'm more concerned for our ability to remain tolerant as we're surrounded by strangers. How can we live so electronically close but so ideologically far from billions of people? Maybe with kindness and gratitude for the chance we have to share of ourselves and listen to other people. Thank you for sharing the internet with me.